Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we try to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Vokey.
And I'm Heidi Subnani. I'm so excited for our conversation this evening, and I thank everyone for joining us. If you would like to follow along and make sure that you do not miss any episodes with our amazing guests, you can follow us on Blue Sky, on our Math for All YouTube channel, or the Facebook page. Any of those will get you to the most recent episode. You can also find additional information at mathforall.us.
Yes. And as always, our episodes are brought to you by our book, Math Activators. You can find that at Didex. And we are going to be talking about trust today, which is really something that I don't think people talk about in math very much. And I think it's super crucial. So I'm excited for this conversation with Dionne Aminata. So let me introduce. Dionne founded Math Trust in 2020 after more than 20 years as an educator. Math Trust partners with pre-K to 12 math educators ready to counter the current narrative of the predictable disparate achievement outcomes for Black students by using actionable research-based methods that allow teachers to recognize Black brilliance and trust all students to engage in grade level mathematics. As a lead author at Illustrative Mathematics, Dionne led the work of embedding curricular supports for culturally responsive teachers and successfully supports Los Angeles curriculum implementation. As IM Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives, she oversaw market research and outreach to districts implementing IM curricula. Since 2022, she has advised the CCSSO Math Collaborative, a network of state math leaders dedicated to effecting change in systems and policies in order to promote mathematics as a subject for all students. In 2023, Dionne was appointed to the board at NCSN, which has a mission to support, sustain, and inspire high-quality mathematics teaching and learning by engaging and empowering math leaders. So let's bring her in. Hello.
Hey, everyone.
How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh, we are so excited to have this conversation with you. And we would love to know, what is your math story?
So that is a good question. It is tied to my why. Like, why am I doing this work? Because as a young child, I was privileged. I was pretty privileged in terms of like my math education. And yeah, I grew up in a middle class family. My parents were both educators and Caribbean, so like I had no choice but to be a scholar. But at 2, my dad was getting his PhD in electrical engineering, and he encouraged both my sister and I to see the world through that lens as a scientist, a physicist, and electrical engineer, he called us math magicians. And so I know, and I'm sure he's watching now. So hi, Dad. Thank you.
Yay.
But yeah, that experience was so powerful for me growing up, because I needed that foundation as I was entering the schools. So I was a very quiet student. In kindergarten, my teacher never pronounced my name right, and I never corrected her. I was at that time, my dad was a professor at Penn State, teaching electrical engineering and also getting his PhD. And I was in a rural school. I think my sister and I were the only Black students in the whole school.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so it was an experience. But the very next year, as a first grader, my dad got a job at Department of Water and Power in Los Angeles. And our family moved to the inner city, where I was at an inner city school in Inglewood, California. and that was a predominantly Black school. And so I had, both sides.
Mhm.
I was a young student, so I was 5 years old and had a very, real understanding of how different experiences, just the vast difference of experiences for students across our country in classrooms. And what I saw was in the white school, we were thought of as writers, explorers,
Mhm.
scientists, mathematicians, right? In our Black school, we were disciplined, controlled, monitored, punished. In our white school, if we asked questions, it meant you were thinking. It meant you were curious. In the Black school, it meant you weren't paying attention. You missed something. You were distracted. In the white school, if you talked in class, you were collaborating with your peers. You were using your resources.
Mhm.
Right? You were meant to, you were taking ownership of your learning. In the Black school, talking meant you were cheating, you were being disruptive, you need to be sent out, you were off task. And so seeing those differences at the age of 5,
Mhm.
I knew that, it never sat right with me.
Mhm.
Um, Fast forward to high school when my family moved to the suburbs, and I was in the honors and AP classes, and oftentimes the only Black student in my honors and AP classes. But I was always quiet, and I didn't ask questions in class because my training since I was 5, like, don't do that.
Yep.
And so what was interesting, since being the only Black student, you would think that I would be standing out and like, okay, this is that girl. And it was quite the opposite. I was absolutely invisible. My teachers didn't ask me questions either. I was, kind of a reliable student, so I didn't have to. I didn't have to like they didn't have to pay attention to me, and they didn't.
Well, you were trained.
I was trained
Yeah,
to be
you were trained to
Yeah.
sit there and just do, right?
work and let
And
those,
be good.
yeah. And my
Wow.
parents, my mom was a teacher. She was an English teacher. She's retired now, and so having that experience at home where I can ask all the questions I want to ask, got the ELA side down, got the
Mhm.
math side down, science, all of that, from my family. I didn't quote unquote need to get it from the schools.
Mhm.
And um, at the time, I was like, this is fine, it's easy. I didn't want the spotlight necessarily. But looking back and really understanding, like, just the detriment that it could
Mhm.
cause for students who don't have that rich, family experience where you're still going to get this learning no matter what.
Mhm.
And um, not being able to feel comfortable and confident asking the questions that you need to ask, it's a real challenge. It's a
Mhm.
real challenge, and just thinking about the way we want to see classrooms, like now that I have
Mhm.
that understanding of, it's amazing to ask questions. It does mean that you are using your resources, that you're thinking, that you're curious. I believe that all students deserve that space to be curious.
Mhm.
And I think that has a lot to do with the relationship between curiosity and trust in our classrooms.
Well, and you know, people may hear this and say, well, how fortunate she was that she had that experience and at home that allowed you to still progress. But I think sometimes we miss as well that that was not a safe space. Like school was not a safe space for
Mhm.
you in that way that we would hope it would be for our students. But also what a loss it is when some students in the class don't feel that their voice is valuable, or that they shouldn't be heard, right? Like, what a detriment that is, not only to that individual student, but the other students in the class, that they're not hearing from their peers and not seeing all voices as really valuable in that space. Like, it is, I'm sure, painful to like look back at that time as a student for yourself, but and that's horrible on one hand, but we also have that, what a missed opportunity for everyone else in that class, to also hear and know that their voices are valuable, and to see the contributions of all members of the classroom.
Absolutely.
What I find fascinating about your story is that there was never a place where you were safe in school. I mean, it was normal for you, so it was normalized and you went home and felt safe, but like Heidi was saying, but wow, even in a place where everyone looked like you, or most everyone looked like you, still not safe. Wow. That's like heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I've spoken to a lot of, Black women and men who, talk about their school experience, and it is quite similar.
Mm-hmm.
The trauma, we talk about trauma-informed practices and things. The trauma is often for us, is often coming from school. It's not necessarily coming from, outside pressures or the home. Is typically at school where we find these pressures. Another thing that probably hit everyone, and we think about all students being able to be curious and have the environment to think about math in different ways. When we were growing up, I mean, I can speak to myself. I'm not trying to age myself, but
we're all there.
hey,
I think we age ourselves in every episode, so
yeah. I mean, but often, well, it's happening today in some spaces too, where when you did your math work, there was an answer key, right? There's always like the answers are there. The answers are.
You hope that you got the odds, right?
Exactly. If you got the odds, you were good. On the back of the book. But if you got the even, it's like, oh gosh, okay, now
I know. Yeah.
Right. And so that way of thinking about math, like, just if we can pause there for a moment. That's not about solving problems, right? That's about finding the right answer, and not even really finding it. Like, the answer's there somewhere, and like the teacher knows it or the book knows it, and we just got to get to it, right? And so when we think about math in that way, it's not about solving problems. It's about knowing the steps to get an answer. That's what's being celebrated. And when you kind of compound that with a culture of learning where, like, you got to just do these things, like it's more compliance based, right? You just got to sit there. You got to be, compliant. You have to be obedient. Don't speak out of turn, like those kinds of things. It stifles that curiosity, right? Because just thinking about what are the steps, what do I have to do to get this answer? What I have to do to not be in trouble? What I have to do? Not like, how should I be thinking about this? What connections can I make with what I know and what I'm learning? And how's it relevant to my life? Like, we're not trained in math, just in general, to think about those things. Yes.
It feels very new to be. I mean, even we're both consultants. We go into schools and we work with teachers, and it still feels very new to be asking students to do the thinking and
Mm-hmm.
all the things that go along with that, and all of the different pedagogies and things that are not new. None of it's new. But it still feels very new, to your point. I mean, when I grew up, I felt that way as well. I mean, kind of safe, but also I didn't want to answer questions because I didn't want to be wrong.
Right.
But it still feels new. And I don't know, Heidi, how long have you been doing this work? I've been doing this work for, I don't know, 15, 18 years now. So gosh, when is it not going to feel new anymore? When is the rest of the world going to catch on to this?
Yeah, and that's really the why behind my work. I feel like I feel like there has been a lot of research behind these practices that we're all on the ground, with teachers in schools or leaders, whoever, trying to make these changes and trying to make sure that they understand, like, this is why we're doing this. And it's still not really happening on a broad scale. We look at the NAEP data, we look at all the data, it sucks. Like we can say it improved by this much, but it's still pretty terrible when 30% of the student population is proficient in math. That's a terrible number.
I mean, it's really a scary number. And we fight against so many tides, I guess, like in trying to shift the way that we think about math in particular. I feel like because like societally it's okay to not be good at math, and the types of math that we allow students to have access to, and so many roadblocks get put up on they can't because, and I'm like, well, but we haven't even tried yet.
Yeah.
Like we haven't. How do you actually know?
Yeah. It's like we haven't, just because you have a curriculum product that says like any of them, I mean, really, it doesn't mean you've embraced the philosophy that was intended by that was intended, I guess, is the big thing, right? Like, so it's that, like, using the same problem but doing it in the way that it's always been done when we're about answer giving is not in keeping with the shifts that many in math education are trying to make. And we do that, and we erode any of the willingness for students to have curiosity about the mathematics, which is what we actually want them to do.
Right, which is exactly what she said in her own story, right? Yep. Oh.
I do have hope. I want to say that I do think it's possible. I'm seeing changes in small pockets. My goal is to, of course, not have it only reside in small pockets, but it is going to take a lot of people, a lot of resources, folks like you, both too, working towards the same goal. There's a lot of work out there.
There's a lot of work to be done. Yeah. There's a lot of work. But so, I mean, I want to lead into your question because I feel like we're jumping into it already. But knowing the work that you do with illustrative mathematics, you have a platform that is a really, really good platform to stand on right now. And I'm so excited to have this conversation because both Heidi and I work in schools where they're using that product. And I mean, it's fair to say that it's, if not the best, one of the best products out there for so many reasons.
I would have to agree with that.
Well, how could you not? Yeah. You might get fired.
I don't work with IM currently.
Yeah.
I'm currently on my own with Math Trust, and our tag,
Oh,
let's trust our students to do the math. So this question is really tied to the work that I'm currently doing. But yes, when I was at IM, it was definitely a pleasure to be able to, one, like sit on the writing team and create with amazing writers, but also bring the lens of culturally responsive pedagogy to the team and really sit with those ideas. And it was hard work. And you know, didn't
sure.
perfect. I worked on the K-5 side of things. But it definitely, like you said, I agree. It's one of the best, if not the best. I can say that. Curriculum out there, and it's only getting better because there are improvements happening. That being said, the work that I do now is working more closely with leaders, state leaders across the nation with CCSSO, Council of Chief State School Officers, and the Math Collaborative, working with leaders through NCSM. I'm a board member there, and also working with leaders through Math Trust, just period. Working with different school districts across the nation. And I focus on leaders mainly because when we think about all of the things that need to happen in a classroom, there's a crisis here in terms of trust. There's a trust crisis, call it. No one really trusts anyone right now. The teachers don't really trust the students because a lot of different factors that are very valid. Things like, you know, absenteeism, gaps in instruction that happen before they enter the room. So varying levels of, you know, of quote unquote skill. But when we think about that, you also think about on the parent side, there's a lot of distrust of schools. I would also just venture out to say for Black parents, having the traumatic experiences at school, they want to protect their children from having those traumatic experiences as well. And so just like thinking about all of those factors, it really does take leadership, strong leadership, to allow space in the space for teachers to have that training and have the encouragement to be curious about their students' thinking. Turn, you know, once we get those practices strong, then the teachers can believe it because they're going to be seeing the progress in their classrooms. Yeah, so I think there's an issue with us not really, as a whole, not really knowing what a math classroom should look like. And I see you're nodding your head. It's what you spoke to, right? It's like we're telling you to try these things, do these things, and it's still a struggle even when you have the right curriculum.
Well, I mean, and who has, even if you're able to get like students and teachers on board, if the administrator comes in and is looking for something that's the exact opposite of what I've been working with that teacher on, the disconnect there is so jarring. And then it becomes such a setback to any of that work going forward, right?
That's immediately what I was thinking of when she was saying that she's working with, you know, leaders, because you get hired to do a job and you leave. You're not there all the time to assure that what your work you did is happening. And so that's up to the leaders in the building. So there really does need to be a partnership with the principals and the assistant principals, whoever supervisor oversees teachers and the quality of work that's happening. So I applaud you for doing that work, because you hate to have everything be top down, but really if there's no cohesiveness from the top, it's very easy to get off track.
Yeah, and what I'm also noticing is that there's a trust issue there as well. So thinking about when, there is a top-down decision, like, hey, we're doing this curriculum, let me see it in your classroom, do it with fidelity, whatever that means, right? And you got to get it done. What happens is teachers who really enjoy their practice, they become like, okay, now I have to be compliant with this thing. And now the teacher, the principal or the leader is going to evaluate me, right, on this new thing. And I can say, well, that principal doesn't know what they're talking about, right? And they don't really know how to coach me on this, because I've been doing this and I know what courses to use. And yeah, they say that the curriculum says to do all these things, but I know this part is going to work and that part is going to work for my students. And so the choices they make, whether they're, amazing or not, the principal, if they're not inside of that work, or the leader, whoever's supporting them, if they're not inside of that work, how are they going to really support them or build that trust, right? Build that trust in their teachers, right? Now, to do the work that they really want to do for their students.
I feel like the work that needs to be done, and maybe this is where you're going, but is, the work that we want teachers to do with students is the work that leaders need to do with teachers. Absolutely. And there needs to be a vulnerability that happens between teachers and leaders, but even just among teachers, to share thoughts and not always feel like you all have to have the right answer. Let's try to figure out this problem together. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think every district will say there's no time for that.
Yes.
But if we don't make time, right, we make time for the things that we value, whether or not we're making time, or like the things that you value will always get the time. And shifting that and like putting the time where it's going to make the difference, I think is such a thing.
But but Heidi, it's exactly what you said, right? They need to see it as the top value.
Yeah.
Right? Valuing every student has to be the top value. If it's not, what are we even here for? And you can say that it is, but if we're not doing that work for every student, and we have all these excuses, just all the ones that you just said, Dionne, like, absenteeism, this kid has a hole because they came from a different district, all the stuff.
Yeah, when I think about the trust factor, I think about how mindsets are always the hardest to shift, right?
Yes, they are.
Is doing something. Okay, what do I have to do with practice? Okay, I can work towards us, perfecting a practice, but the mindset is very hard. And so the way I kind of go about it is more so on those action steps. What can we actually do? What do we need to do to ensure that we are trusting, that trust is there, that we are trusting our students to do the math, and that we're trusting our teachers to be curious about their students' thinking. I think you said it, Amalia, that there's teacher turnover. Like the teachers, there's high, especially in predominantly Black schools or poor, economically poor schools. We have a high teacher turnover that hasn't changed in forever, right? Yeah. And so we have to have some sort of stability with how the leadership is bringing on new teachers, how, supporting the students in all of these transitions, right? And so that is a priority. One thing I can say, though, there is, with math specifically, there is a you don't know what you don't know piece that's associated with this. And so, a lot of times I encounter situations where they think the math is fine because when they go into classrooms, it's the way, they feel like it's the way it's been taught. They're doing a great job. And when we look at the data, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
But like, the question is, yes, we love our students. Let's just have that as a given. We love our students. If we love our students, and I've heard Deborah Parrott, my work bestie, say, why are we doing the same things to them that happened to us? And we hate the experience. Right. So
all the time.
Right.
Right. So if we're doing that, if we know that, what's happening now, even though it looks fine, it's status quo, right? It's not working. So I always turn to the data. The data will tell you what to do, what to change, when to change, how to change, right? And so something needs to change because our data is not good.
So this may not be like a question that you want to consider or like a thought, but so just say, when you have situations, because I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been mucking around in this world for a little bit. What is maybe some advice that we can think of for people in leadership when they're trying to make changes like this and they're getting a lot of pushback from community, and like, yes, from teachers as well, but from community and their own staff? Like, what might we say? What could we be doing to like bolster the leaders? And it could be a department chair, it could be like a peer, a colleague of who's up against, like, fighting against like that kind of mentality of it should just go back to being the way it was, or these kids can't because that's a nice thought, but and community members who are so afraid of
change,
their child not maybe getting a 98, maybe they got a 96 and then like they're losing their minds, whatever it may be. It's not a specific example at all. But like, what advice might you have for people in that situation?
Well, there is work that actually Deborah Parrott and Parrott Creighton, and I are working on, and it's around responsive coaching, but specifically with collective agency. And that collective agency part is so important because you are bringing in the perspectives and ideas and the desires and the goals of the people that you're working with. And so it's the top down only that never really works, right? Especially if you're trying to have a humanistic approach to this work. And so making sure that you see, like, we want to see the brilliance in our students. We want to see the brilliance on our team as well, and treating them like they have brilliance, because they do. What is their expertise? What are those strengths? And really highlighting those aspects, and also being vulnerable and humble yourself, right? Because you don't have all of the answers, especially if you're leading more than just math. You don't have all the answers. And so you need to be open to those experiences that are very important, that are surrounding you. And so, Yeah, so honoring the brilliance of your team and listening, and also creating goals together that assume that everybody has a shared goal of making sure all students are successful.
It's such a mindset. I mean, I think there's so much of the answer there is in shifting mindset, and I think you're right that stakeholders need to be a part of it. I wonder how we include parents. I mean, that might be a whole other show to
It's
talk about that.
It is a whole other show, and it is very critical to incorporate parents, because parents are frustrated. I have a few friends of mine who, post on Facebook just help for homework, or help for just like, what is this new thing that my students are doing, my child is doing in the class? I didn't do it this way. I don't understand what's happening. And it's real frustration. And sometimes I look at the problem that they're talking about. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't written. That wasn't written very well.
I was like, why did we send that home? Please don't do that. I definitely had that conversation with a friend and her, I think it was fourth or fifth grader in partial quotients. And I was like,
oh,
I went home, was like trying to turn that into a formula and like fill in the box of, and I was like, oh no. And I was like, okay, well, I think this is what but yes, it is for some of those things. It's really frightening for educated parents and like to look at something and you're like, well, I went to college. Like, why can't I do my third graders math the way that they're asking me to do it?
And it's exactly that. Does it have to be this exact way?
Yeah.
And are teachers also equipped with the knowledge and skills to be able to say, do it a different way and it's okay. We'll make the connections when you get to the classroom, or just allowing that space for questions, curiosity, critical thinking about, like, does this even make sense? Usually it's just like, go ahead and tell us the answer, right? And so get out of that answer key mentality, that math is a creative, and it's a beautiful experience, and it should feel that way for all of our students and our parents, right? It should be also involved in that magical space.
Yeah. But all of that, I mean, just to kind of pull it together, because it's about your question, all of that requires trust.
Yes.
And building trust among your stakeholders, between leaders and teachers and students, parents. I mean, it's a whole, I mean, tell us about it.
It's a lot. It is a lot. And we have, there are specific ways, like communication is a big piece of this, right? Allowing parents to understand what happens when you do switch a curriculum, because that is a big deal for teachers and for parents. Allowing the students to get acclimated with a different way of experiencing math, especially for grade students. If they've been used to sitting and getting and waiting for an answer to appear, they're going to feel like that's the way math should go, right? It's going to be a transition for them as well. So allowing that space and having communication and really practicing a different set of skills that are required for a problem-based instructional model, or a model where discourse is leading, is a driving force for learning, right? So that's a different way of experiencing math instruction, and all parties should really understand the differences in the expectations.
And you would think it would be an easier sell, given the world that we live in. And I mean, well, that's a whole other thing, but just like the world where just adding is not that's not going to be the thing that does it. Like we're in a global world, more so now than we've ever been in the past. And um, who you're competing with is not just the people in your town or your state or your country anymore. Like it's a global world where we're asking students and probably going to leave them with a lot more problems than we're solving right now. And so having the ability to think flexibly and problem solve in a real way is that it's only more important. It's not less important. And
yeah, I mean, we don't even know the kinds of problems that our grandchildren are going to have to solve.
Yes.
But we know we have to teach them to be problem solvers, or they won't do. What will happen?
Yeah. And, we're still feeling the shift away from thinking of us as computers, as like just to do some arithmetic, do the steps, use the algorithms, and keep it pushing. That has shifted to we need to problem solve. And so what are those skills in a math classroom that are going to be different when you're problem solving? So not being able to talk can't be a thing anymore, right? We can't just say don't talk, because if you're facing a problem, even on a job or just, trying to, access something, you're going to ask for help. And you're expected to use your resources and your team and, the experts in the room, right? So those are different skills than the way I learned in math class. And so many students today are still learning in that old, tired way.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I do want to share my trust actions, because I think that would help kind of frame the work that I'm doing. And yeah.
No, I have it. I can pull it up. But we're going to go away. Our faces are going to go away, and we're just going to talk in the background as we look at this. Sound good?
Okay.
Oh, wait, maybe I lied. Here we go.
There we go.
It is. All right. Yes. So I created this trust actions framework initially to help me consolidate my ideas around the passion that I had for this work. And now I use this as a tool for shifting mindsets around what math instruction should look like. I want all students to have the opportunity to be curious, ask questions, show their brilliance in math class. And it's really our job as educators to create that space. But it's hard. And so this framework is, like it says at the top, how to trust each and every student with grade level math. The words at the bottom might be a little bit too hard to.
Well, we'll link to the website as well. We'll put a link in the comments.
Yeah. I can also shift to the next page on the slide so you can see what each one is talking about here. So the first T is to throw away labels. And we want to make sure that we do that because those labels stick. And for me, the label was you're a top performing student, right? And so that's also bad. It forced me to not want to be wrong ever. And so that meant I had to be silent, right? And so those fixed ideas about students, it really affects our students, and we want them to be able to grow and not kind of stay in that same lane that we may believe them to be. And we're usually wrong about the labels that we put on students.
Right.
So probably want to just stop using them altogether.
Yeah.
This R is respond to student thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're thinking about what that means, it means you have to create that space for discourse to happen, right? And so being responsive means you're responding to what the students are saying, doing, the brilliance that's coming from them. And of course, when we are listening, we have to be flexible, right? We have to be prepared for what does come out of their mouth, right? So we have to have a level of understanding and a level of preparation. That means that we have supports, whether it's another question or a resource, a tool, manipulative, that will support their thinking and get them to grade level in understanding.
Can I stop you there for a minute? Because I think this is so important, and what you said about having a plan
Yes.
to respond. Can you like expound on that a little bit? Like, how do teachers plan here? Because I think like this is so critical. We say like, oh, it tells me what questions to ask. It is that enough?
No, it is not enough. Thank you for saying that. And I wrote some of those questions to ask, and so I know it is not enough. But so when you think about what may come out of a student's mouth, it may
Mhm.
be something that is right, spot on, exactly what you wanted them to say, and it could not be. It could be something that you didn't expect, but might be correct.
Mhm.
And if you don't know whether or not that student is having a correct pathway towards their thinking, you could absolutely destroy that student's brilliance or just confidence really
Mhm.
in their math abilities, right? Because you're not responding in a way that's encouraging oftentimes if you don't understand what they're saying. Um, Hopefully you would be in the mindset of, really asking those assessing questions just to really understand what that student is saying before you kind of respond in a way that may be harmful.
Mhm.
So asking those assessing questions is really important here. So that really requires a deep understanding of the content. And that gets to you and my last as well. But this is, I mean, you're pausing at the right moment because this it fits into this nice little box. I did design this, but it is so hard to do.
Yes.
It's not something that you just jump in and look at the lesson and be like, okay, I'm ready. It really does take that anticipation of student thinking. So thinking about the 5 practices, that first practice is anticipate, right? So
Mhm.
anticipate student thinking, that means doing the work. That
Yeah.
means really, and not just doing it one way, doing it multiple ways. How
Well,
might your
that's what I think you're right in that sometimes it takes working with other teachers to do that work too, so you can experience some other perspectives because you solve it one way. Let's face it, you have one way that you're going to do it.
Yep, and that's it. That's it. And if we can't explore other ways, then it could be a really harmful experience for us too.
Mhm. So true.
Yes. So this next piece is the U, and we've talked about this today using
Mhm.
instructional
Mhm.
materials. I am, and others. One. Uh, but when we think about high quality instructional materials, we not only are talking about, okay, does it have all of the standards covered? It's more than that. We want to support students' conceptual understanding
Mhm.
as well as their skills and fluency, and have a space, have a way for that to come about through the materials. So it's a both and,
Mhm.
to make sure that students are learning conceptually. When we think about the data that's out there, what happens in a lot of predominantly Black and Brown schools is a focus on just the procedures, just the arithmetic, just the fact fluency, and the concepts become tricks and very proceduralized. Even if you're using a strong curriculum, it becomes very proceduralized. So this is not just use it, it's use it with that intention of building conceptual understanding and fluency simultaneously.
Yes.
All right. And then we get to our S, one of my favorites, seeking out brilliance. And so we want to make sure that we are allowing students to see our curiosity about their thinking and genuine curiosity, not just, hey, tell me more. Like we want, we want it to be authentic so that they can really think deeply about about the questions that you're posing, about the connections between math concepts, about the connections between what they already know, either from school or home, to what the problem that they're solving is. And that strengthens their math identity. It strengthens their sense of belonging. It affirms them. And just making space for that brilliance to shine, like asking questions that relate to them, is so powerful. And it's needed in order to build that trust.
I feel like this one is care about your students.
Yeah.
Love your students.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and value the math that they do maybe outside of math.
Yeah.
Right. And this just reminds me of an article that I was reading. My dad's from India. They spend most of the winter in India because they live in Maine the other part of the year. So, makes sense. But they were going back, and there was an article that they came out about student or children in various shantytown areas of the larger cities in India who are brilliant with their mental math and their flexible thinking, but when they go to school, how that is not translating. And they're struggling with the school math versus home math or work math, because most of them are working in some capacity as well. And this seeking the brilliance looks at that as being just as valuable.
Absolutely.
And like how you make those connections between the two, because that's part of our job, right? Is if we're seeking out brilliance, we're looking for those ways and trying to make those connections within our classroom spaces. And it should be that brilliance is what propels them even further. But in so many cases, when we're dealing with students who are coming from backgrounds of poverty, or Black and brown students who were not seeking brilliance, we're not looking for those spaces where that math is inherent in their lives.
Yes. Yes. And validating those spaces as math spaces as well. And that's why I'm focusing this work, like this framework, on how do we trust our students.
Yep.
So this practice of seeking out brilliance, that's an action step for the educators. Right? That's on us to find those moments for us to say, okay, yes, I can trust you now because I see how you're able to make these connections between your life or between a strategy that you have and the strategy that's being shared here in our classroom, right? So that moment of curiosity that really does open up a student's identity, because oftentimes we don't get asked questions like that. Like, how does it connect to your family life, your home? Something that you do in school.
Yeah, this is reminding me very much of volunteer work that I did with teachers in Zimbabwe. It was the exact same thing that you're talking about, Heidi. They would do all of this math at home that was very much a part of their life and come to school and math was very different, which I think can be said about probably plenty of places in the US as well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it becomes so relevant in other cultures, like glaringly so.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. There's this idea of school math.
Mhm.
Yes.
It just
Yeah.
happens at school, and it's
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real boring. It's real boring. Yeah.
There's an answer key, and nobody cares how.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. You're gonna give me the answer key. Why do I even have to do this?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so our last T is actually my favorite subject in this work. And we spoke to it a little bit, and it's taking time to study the coherence of
Mhm.
the standards.
Mm.
You have to be flexible when you shift towards, shift away from, the teacher is the knower of all things with direct instruction, right?
Mhm.
To the student's brilliance being the driver of the lesson.
Yep.
That means there's so many different ideas that can come about.
Mhm.
As we know, math is not a linear thing. We have lots of different ways to approach similar ideas and ways of coming to understanding specific concepts. And so as a teacher, we should know multiple ways of approaching problems,
Mhm.
know how concepts build from one grade to the next, and how they build within the grade.
Yeah.
So, when we're thinking about supporting unfinished instruction, we talk about, all of the reasons why we don't trust our students is because, and it has to do with unfinished instruction. Either they missed class or, during the pandemic, we had whole entire chapters skipped, right?
Yep.
Who needs to do geometry?
Yeah.
Like all of these,
Right.
right? So we know we skipped some things, but then
Mhm.
there was students who were absent. And, so today's students, there could be gaps in instruction in a lot of different areas. So in order to be able to respond to student thinking, the R, we have to understand the coherence in the standard.
Mhm.
And I think part of the problem with that is that when the standards were brand new, everybody was doing that work. You had to. You
Yeah.
had to do the work because it was newish, It looked different than it did before.
Yeah.
And everyone was trying to get on the same page, but now the expectation is regardless of whether or not you are having new teachers come into into play every single year, kids graduating from college, the expectation is everybody knows all of it.
Yeah.
And it's not actually true.
It's
When
not.
teachers teach second grade, they know everything that they're supposed to do in second grade. Do they know everything that's happening in fourth grade? Well, maybe if they taught fourth grade, but that they probably didn't.
And
So
thinking about when we, again, put that with schools that have high teacher turnover,
Mhm.
yes.
we're losing a lot of veteran teachers to other careers because of pay and different reasons. We think about, we have to be able to train
Mhm.
teachers coming in to think about the importance of knowing all of the standards and not
Yep.
just your own grade level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we have guaranteed jobs forever. So
Absolutely.
there's that.
No, but there is hope. When I think about these things, these trust actions, and I'm just going to go back to, or I don't know if we want to close out of this, but when I think about these trust actions, I think of them as just that, actions, like things that we
Mhm.
can do to
Mhm.
support our trust in our students, to build our trust. Because unfortunately, we are in a space where don't believe it until I see it.
Mhm.
Right?
And even then.
Right? And so we have to do things to be able to see it. And luckily, we do have a culture of, okay, let's do some things. Let's try some
Yep.
things and see what works. And so that's my approach to this work. And I'm really
I love it.
Mhm.
I love how you've broken it down, and I think each one is so critical to the work that needs to be done on so many levels of teaching and learning. If you could just go to all the schools and do that, that would really help us a lot.
Yeah, I'm working really hard. The need for this.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
So how can people find out more about you and the work that you're doing right now? We have a couple of ways that we'll put up, but talk to us about that.
So luckily I am on all the socials and I have a website. So there's my social, mathtrust_ed. And that's on Instagram. That is also on Blue Sky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also on Facebook with Math Trust. I recently deleted the Twitter, and that's okay. That is okay.
We're in the same
I
spot.
just can't get into mine. So I guess I still exist. I don't know.
That works too. But yeah, so I'm on all the socials, but my website is also available. Same thing, mathtrusted.com. And so if you want to reach out, schedule a time to meet, everything can happen right there on the website. And yeah, I'm grateful for folks like you, and I have a team of colleagues and some who end up working with me who are in this work. We're all in this work together. I feel like once none of this is based on ideas that are brand new. Like y'all were shaking your heads and all of that.
It's just taking a lot of ideas and putting it in a bigger package and trying to meld them together, right? I mean,
well, and making
even if you just look at your trust, it's those things are a package that's been pulled together.
Yeah. And these are the things, like I said, I thought about it as when I was working with Unbound Ed, when I was working with CCS, like all of these different organizations, the learning that I got from all of those spaces, this is what I'm pouring into, my work with Math Trust. So this framework was really developed for me to kind of, what am I doing here? What do I believe in? And now I can see it as a tool that can be shared with other folks. So each one of those letters are ways in which I work with different schools, organizations, leaders. They kind of pick one and we go into depth. Pick one or two or three or all sometimes, but we want to make sure that that's how we're building trust.
Love it.
And
love
you
it,
have
love
some exciting news as well on.
Do I? Okay. Well, yes, I do. I just found out not too long ago, about a couple weeks now, that I was accepted to Stanford University. I'll be starting my PhD program in the fall in math education.
Awesome.
And I'll be
great.
Dr. Joe Bowler. I'm so excited.
Yes.
That's amazing. Amazing.
They are so fortunate to have you. It is going to be a fantastic learning experience.
Yeah.
And we are so excited to hear more.
I know. We really wish you the best with that. I think that you're going to bring a lot of excellent perspective to Stanford.
I appreciate that. Thank you. No, I'm really excited. excited for the work. It's a 5-year full-time program.
Mhm.
Yay.
Into a frame of mind as a student, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yep.
It's got to real soon.
Absolutely will, and it'll be so exciting, and yeah, I can't wait for you to hear more about like the work as you go through, because it'll
Yeah.
only, having the opportunity to focus fully in that space and really develop the work that you've been doing is super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and she'll be able to do like actual research too, which
Yeah.
yeah, look at the fingers.
I'm just over here thinking, oh, she's going to have access to a university library.
Heidi will be staying in touch with you.
No. My husband was like, I was like, I just needed one class. I lost my it's like I'm on the alumni version now, and that's not fun.
It's not. I get it. Yes, I will be happy to support anything as much as I can, because this is
Lord.
bigger than just so. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We're super excited to help you spread your message, and obviously Heidi will be keeping in touch so that she has an in with the academic library that she lives for. And I'm excited to see the work that you are going to continue to do and how your doctorate will enhance that.
I'm so excited. Thank you all so much. I had a great time here. Thank you for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Why do I always wave at the end?
I don't like she's actually walking out of the room. It's great. Well, that was, I mean, again, every single time I say this, but like we are the luckiest that we get to talk to the coolest math gurus around, and she has such an awesome background. So it will be interesting to see everything that happens from here on in for her. All right. We get to talk to Danny Fry next week, or not next week, in a couple weeks.
I was like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to give you a heart attack. Yeah. So
Someone
March
we've met
13th.
in real life. Like sometimes we've met people. I met Dionne in real life in California a couple of years ago, but it's not often that we get to talk to people after we've met them in real life. Sometimes we talk to them and then we meet them in real life.
Yeah.
But we've met Danny in real life. So
yeah.
Yay.
So that's exciting. And you can find our book at Didex. And until March 13th, sorry, you go.
We hope that you keep math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. Have a great night.